So we left off going through and making sure we understood what qualifies as a derivative under the accounting literature. And we identified three items: that there has to be an underlying and a notional amount, or if not a notional amount, a payment provision. There has to be little or no initial net investment. And there has to be net settlement or the implicit ability to settle net in cash. And those three items we ended up pulling from the accounting literature. And here it is in 815-10-1583. And here are the three items. And it has to have all of these items, has to have all of the following characteristics in order for this to occur. And we'll go through and get a little bit of a better understanding by giving you a live example of what these things really mean. So what I thought we would do is we would start with maybe talking about a contract that you may have heard about. And it is an exchange-traded option. So what we want to do is we're going to look at an exchange-traded option. And let's use, say, Apple Incorporated. Okay. And what an option does, right? If we believe this is a contract, we have two counterparties. We likely have a buyer of the option and a seller of the option. So what does the buyer get for buying this option? Well, the buyer receives the right to purchase the asset, in this case, Apple Incorporated, and specifically Apple Incorporated stock, or they can buy an option to get the right to sell Apple Incorporated, shares of Apple Incorporated. Right? So we refer to this as this buyer, this right. We refer to that as a call option. And when the buyer has the right to sell, so they have a right to call, that means they get a right to call the shares to them, purchase the shares. If they have the right to sell, that means they have the right to put the shares, sell the shares. And so this is what's referred to as a put option. Right? So that's the buyer side. Well, what about there's going to be somebody else, right? Who's selling this option? Well, the seller has the obligation, conditional on the buyer exercising their right. So they have the obligation if the buyer exercises their right. And they have the obligation, I'm going to keep these in the same order, they have the obligation to sell, or they have the obligation to purchase. So we also will sometimes have the seller be referred to as the writer of the option. The seller, the writer of the option. And so when we think about this, if they have the obligation to sell conditional on their right to purchase, then this must be a written call option. Or a sold call option. And we can keep going with our logic and say, well, if they have the obligation to purchase when the buyer exercises their right to sell, this must be a written put option. We're going to focus mostly on the buyer side of these options, because if you're trying to hedge risk, you're likely not selling options, but you're likely trying to buy options. But Not always. So we're really going to focus, and we're going to focus mostly on purchased call options, because it's a little easier to get your head around a purchased call option than looking at some of these others. All right? So what I thought we would do is we would take a look at a particular screen. We're going to pull up the screen here, and this is for Apple stock, AAPL, and this is just on Yahoo Finance. And what we've got here is we've got summary, company outlook, etc. And then I have options. I've got the options here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to change, right now we have the option date of July 31st. I'm going to change this, if it's possible. I'm going to change this out a little bit. I'm going to change it out to December 18. So now we have December 18. Okay. And it's going to take a little bit to refresh. So these are calls, right? The first thing is we have calls, and then later on in the list we have puts. So let's take a look at our calls. Now the first grouping, they're all shaded in blue. Well, right up here we see that anything shaded in blue is in the money. So what does that mean? Okay, well, this is what it means. So for the very first line, we have this Apple contract, right? It's still saying July 31st, so I'm not really sure why that is. So let's see if we can scroll down a little bit, see if we can find the December 31. It's still giving me the July 31st. That's okay. I'm going to refresh this and see if we can get the options I'm looking for. There we go. Now I've got my options that I'm looking for. It's giving me the right list. So here we've got our Apple December 18, 20, and these are call options. See here, call options, and the price is 00115 000. So it can go all the way out to 3 decimal places, right? So what we have here, this is the contract name, and the last trade date, this is when it last traded, so it hasn't traded in a while, or doesn't appear to have traded in a while. We do have some volume here, so it'll probably update today. But what we've got here is we've got a strike price. What this means is the person who buys this option has the right to purchase Apple at $115 per share. Right? Now the price of Apple currently is $375 a share. So I can buy it at a lower price if I buy this option. And I could theoretically sell it at $375. Now, one of the problems is that the price of this option is $200 a share. So it's suggesting that I would have to spend a lot of money to buy this particular option. As we scroll down a little bit, we move away from in the money options to out of the money options. You'll see that now I have the right to purchase at $380. It's now an out of the money option. And you can see that the price to buy the option also starts going down dramatically as you move away from the price that you would have to buy it at. So these are call options. And this is basically the option, this is the option chain, if you will. Option chain price, if you will. Put options, right? If we want to find in the money put options, we'd have to go all the way down here. Remember, this is the right to sell. Here I can sell it for $500, even though the price currently is only $375. How much would it cost me to buy this option? It would cost me around $111 per share to buy this option. Okay. So, and as you go further up, if I wanted to sell it at $115, it would only cost me 26 cents to buy this option. So if all of a sudden Apple crashed and it dropped below $115 a share, then this would be a pretty good price to pay at 26 cents to get whatever gain it would be if it dropped below $115 a share. We're going to stay up here with our call options. So The strike price is something that's in the contract. Right? There's other variables that you see here, and we'll go over those when we talk a little bit more about option pricing. But I at least want to have you understand what the strike price in the money, out of the money is. So, if we wanted to then take a look at these Apple call options, right, and we wanted to evaluate how it relates to our derivative, our three derivative criterion. So let's make sure we refresh what are the three derivative criterion. So there's an underlying and a notional amount or payment provision, little or no initial net investment, and net settlement or the implicit ability to settle net in cash. So let's take a look at our Apple call option. So Apple call option, we have, let's assume we're going to purchase that December 18 call option, and we have the ability, right? So here's the option contract. We're going to buy by December 18, 20. I can purchase Apple for $400 per share. Okay. The current price of the option, and I'm looking at this right here, is $18.44 per share. Okay. Exchange traded options, which this is, exchange traded options come in bundles, right? You don't get to just buy an option for one share. You have to buy an option, and there's a couple of different bundles. You buy minis, micros, as well as a regular option. Regular options come in bundles of 100 shares. Okay? So, right now, the stock price for Apple, current market price, is $3.75 based on when I'm recording this video on July 28th. Okay, this is the 7/28/20 price. All right, so this is the detail we have. So let's go through our three criterion. So the first criterion, that there is an underlying and a notional amount, or if there's not a notional amount, there's a payment provision. All right. So let's deal with the notional amount first, right? The notional amount, if we think about this, and we think about trying to come up with a fair value of anything, this is the quantity, right? This is our Q, right? So what is the quantity that we have in this particular contract? Well, the quantity we have here is 100 shares. So the notional on this contract is 100 shares. So it has a notional. All right, so what makes this contract go up and down in value? Well, whatever makes it go up and down in value is considered the underlying. This is the thing that gives it its value. This is basically, if you think about it, this is the P. And so we think about P times Q, that's going to give us our total fair value. So what's the P? What is making this go up and down? Well, what's making this go up and down is the market price of Apple. So that's what's making it go up and down. And if we thought about going back to, and we will go back to it, if we go back to this screen here, you can see that as the share price goes in the money, the value of the option goes up. the further away it is, further away the strike price is from the value of the option goes down. So as Apple starts to approach $490 a share, all of these other options will go up will go up significantly in value. Just as when we look at some of these options back here that are way in the money, you can see this is worth $199, $251, et cetera, et cetera. So the underlying is the thing that increases its overall value, right? So as the market price of Apple changes, the value of this, the fair value of this option will also change. And the number of shares is basically your P times Q is going to give us our aggregate amount of fair value change. So this is our criterion number 1, and we pass criterion number 1. Let's think about criterion number 2. Little or no initial investment relative to how much it would cost me to buy 100 shares of Apple. So how much would it cost me to buy 100 shares of Apple? To buy 100 shares of Apple at its current market price of $375, it would cost me $37,500 to buy 100 shares of action in Apple. How much is it costing me to buy this one option? Well, remember, this is $18.44 a share times 100 shares. So this is going to cost me $1,844 to buy this option. So instead of shelling out $37,000 plus to get 100 shares of Apple action, I can shell out $1,844 to get the same kind of market change. So, do you believe that that is little or no initial net investment relative to what it would cost me to buy the asset? The answer to that is yes, we pass number 2. Number 3, right, is net settlement or the implicit ability to settle net in cash. Well, with exchange traded options, I can actually sell the option prior to exercise. In fact, I never have to exercise. I can just sell the option because it's exchange traded, and somebody will give me money for that particular option. So if all of a sudden the option price goes from $18.44 per share up to $25 per share, why wouldn't I just sell the option to somebody else who's interested in buying it? Because as you saw in that Yahoo Finance screen, people are buying and selling these things. So I don't actually have to take physical possession of the shares. I don't actually have to exercise this. I can settle this net in cash. And even if I decide to exercise it, I can negotiate with the seller just to get whatever the net cash is and not actually pay the remaining amount at $400 a share. I don't actually have to buy Apple at $400 a share. I can just take whatever the profit is between the price that I pay for it at $18.44 versus whatever the option price is. So for this particular Apple call option, I do have the ability to sell the option or to settle net in cash and not actually take physical possession of the asset. So this is just a quick example of how this Apple call option satisfies that it has an underlying, that's the price of Apple shares, it has a notional amount, 100 shares. I'm spending very little money to get $37,500 worth of Apple action. And I can also, because it's an exchange traded option, I can just hand in the option or exercise the option, not actually take possession of the shares, and just get a net cash settlement. So in this particular case, this exchange traded Apple option is a derivative for accounting purposes.